Before I contact a football club, there's a list that I always check so that it gives me chances of placing my players so that they can accept me in negotiating or dealing with me. So today I'm going to be sharing my screen with you and walking you through the things I always do before contacting a football club. So let's go. So now we are at the football agent pre-contract checklist. So before I want to contact a football club, this is what I do. So I look at the squad analysis. I'm going to go through this so that you can see what I do before I contact a football club. The reason behind here is I want to get a lot of ideas on what the football club is doing, so that at least when I contact them, I have a chance of always selling my players. So the first thing is I'll advise every top agent or agent there to try to do this. But I think most people analyze this in different ways. But most beginner agents, the reason you don't sell your players is because you don't do this exercise. So let's go through it so that you understand. So the first thing is I look at the squad analysis. This is the squad analysis place. So I look at like understanding their playing style. I want to know what kind of style they are playing. Are they playing 4-4-3-3 and they need pacey wingers whatsoever they are doing. So I have to watch their games to also analyze this. Then I'm going to know the formation they play, because any player I'm trying to sell, I have to make sure that that player fits into their playing style. Then into that also the next thing there you look at, you identify key players. So key players you don't want to, who play regularly. You don't want to be selling players at a football club that their key players are there, which means they're never going to respond to you. So you want to find where there are more gaps that you can have chances of making a deal happen. Then the next thing also I look at is identifying fringe players or rotation players. In every squad, they have fringe players. They have those players that they can't wait for the transfer window to open so that they move the players on. Those are always like fringe players, and those players, that's where you as an agent, you also want to talk to clubs based on replacing those fringe players. Then next one is find weak position. So this is almost like, let's take for example, if they have a team that the left back is not actually good, and then they need replacement, so they will need to go into the market for that. So you need to spot that on by also watching their games and just probably a right back or a right-footed player might be playing in that position as a left back. That shows that they don't have enough quality there and they will need replacement. Then the next one you can look at is like spot out of form players. So normally, if a player is out of form for a lot of time, most of the time the player wants to be moved on, or he wants to also move on. So I don't want to throw names into this, but let's take for example, if you analyze a big squad like Manchester United squad, there's a player who rarely plays. Like let's take for example, Zexi rarely plays. Ogate is a midfielder. I think he's going to be moving on. I'm just giving an example how you can analyze this. You can also look at that into your it you can also look at that to analyze things much better. So players like that, those names I mentioned, they are out of form players that, or let's put it, Ogate, out of form player that he doesn't play and he might be looking to move on. So those are also positions that you as an agent you have to target and analyze before going to contact the sporting director. Now, after doing the squad analysis, which is a general thing, because you can see that we have different layers. So it shows that there's more to this. So you look at also the transfer dynamics. So the transfer dynamics are, you look at players likely to be sold. So when you look at now the squad, how do you know players likely to be sold? Of course, from just what we analyze from squad analysis, the players likely to be sold are players that I don't have minutes, and they are not picked by the manager, and the manager is still going to be there next season. So probably those players will also want to move on. So that's how you look at the transfer dynamics. Then you know that you can target that area to look for a player that suits the club, and then you before you go talking to the sporting director. Then the next thing also you look at contract expiring check. So when you look at contracts, so you can find, how do you find how do you find which contract is expiring? So you can look this on the transfer market. You can type the club, go to the club name, type it, and then click the transfer market. You're going to always see, for example, if someone's contract is expiring in 2027, you can see that also that is expiring in 2027. Then you already know that, okay, that also can be an area where they want to bring in a body. Then loan players returning. This one also you can also look at who are on loan, and then you can find out also, are they going to be staying? Are they going to move on? So these are things you have to keep an eye on, because as I said, being an agent, if you want to be successful, you have to pay a lot of attention to a lot of things. But if you don't pay attention and you just think like you just have to take a player who is good and just propose to a club, most often you're never going to get a reply. But when you start doing this details analysis, this is what the top agents do. But most often these are not really explained so that people can learn from this. So you rarely see this online. So I'm just trying to give you guys a little bit of in depth of what is done inside before what people see outside the and then transfer is happening. So the next thing also, you look at club financial situation. You don't want to be selling a player to a club when the club, let's say, wants to spend just 10 million, and then you go giving the player talking about 20 million. So that club, which means you haven't researched the club enough. So how do you research your club enough already? You start looking, you try to analyze the last, for example, today transfer window. You're going to see if they are selling players for 1 million, 2 million, or whatsoever. To is it a club that sells, let's take for example a Brighton or the Norwegian clubs, or many clubs that they buy players for 500,000 or a million and then they sell high. So you have to find this model so that you have to understand the model so that you can be able to bring players that suit their financial situation. That also goes in hand with the estimated transfer budget, how much they can spend. So for me, when I want to analyze a player, I mean an estimated transfer budget, I go through their I try to go through their transfer dealings, and then you can spot on, can they buy a player for 5 million? Can they buy a player for 1 million? Can they buy a player for what amount? You can also learn from that. So those are tactical things you need to keep an eye on. Then now we go now into the tactical fit. Players fit the system. Does the player fit the system? So this also comes like you have to have your team, or if not, if you don't have a team yet, you have to be, as an agent, you have to be watching a lot of games to see how they play. Do the wingers, do they need pressing wingers, or wingers who drop into the pocket and receive the ball on half turn? Those are things you can do, you can check on. So then physical and technical match. So what kind of players do they need? Do they need physical players who are technically good? So all these things you have to analyze it, and then league compatibility. Does it suit that league, that the league that your player, the league you want to take the player to? You have to analyze that, and then also define his role in the squad. Can he play? Can he be a main player? Because if you're selling a player, mostly when the player is coming like a backup, it's always hard. But when you have analyzed everything, and then you discover that your player can be a main starter in that team, most likely or not, the club wants to push for a transfer there. Then now the next thing is decision makers, sporting directors identified. So you have to find the sporting director. What is his target? What what are they targeting in the market? What kind of players does he wants to sign? So you already have to look at those situations. Then if it's not the sporting director, usually it's the head of recruitment. So both people play similar role at clubs. They might have a head of recruitment or the sporting director. So that's same. And then also under this, you have to also know profile, preferred player profile to be known. You have to find also the kind of player profile that club needs, because each club has its own identity, each way philosophy wants to play. So you need to already be targeting that situation, how you can solve the problem. Because as a football agent, your job is to solve problems for a football club. If you cannot solve that, then you're already at risk. Then another idea that can give you a little bit also of insight to what they are trying to do, their past signing pattern you can receive. Are they trying to sign a specific league proven players? Because some clubs they discover that, hey, we're just going to go for players who are proven in this league, so that we know what we're getting. We don't want someone that can be can come here and be one of the best players, but also can still also flop. So some clubs tend to be look in the middle and say, hey, let's go for a proven player that has made it in the league, and then we just want stability. Then also, now when you have done all this in the relationship status also matters. You start to build relationship now with the club. Try to look, how do you build relationship? By watching the games, going to watch going to watch sessions and having conversation with people there. You can meet also decision makers on LinkedIn, communicate with them, share your ideas of what you think about your squad, provide value. That's the main thing. When you provide value, then they are going to also try to listen to you. But if you jump into someone's sporting director's DM on LinkedIn and just say, "Hey, I have this striker who scores 30 goals a season," the first question, what level is the striker playing? So all those things are generic messages that are never going to be answered. They're never going to be answered. But when you do this kind of analysis, as I've just put on the screen here, the first thing is when you speak, now you are speaking from a position of, let's say, as a professional, that you have done your job and you have analyzed the squad, the club, you have discovered what they need. So when you're contacting the sporting director or head of recruitment, usually you have something to tell them after doing all this analysis. So this is what I usually do when I want to contact a football club. I run through this list, and when I run through this list, I try to now find, because if I have a player, I'd run through this list, look at my player, does it fit that club? Then I go now to talk to sporting director. Of course, now you need to learn how to network, learn how to speak to people. That's also another thing. So this is what I do, and if this helps you, then you can use this method and then start placing your players. This has been helping me a lot to contact sporting directors and also interview CEO, because when I contact them, I speak from a position of their club. So they see me like someone who has actually done a lot of assignment on their club, and it helps a lot. Okay. So that was it for the video. I hope you learned something. And if you apply this method, it's going to help you. So that it's going to help you a lot so that you don't face difficulties when placing your players. Because when you when you use this list, most clubs see you as someone who have done an assignment on their club. So they are most likely to open up to you and start dealing with you. But if you are that kind of agent that you just go on, have a player, and then you just spam football clubs and say, I have this player that is doing well, can you check him? Mostly those are generic messages that club don't reply to. So I advise you, most top agents, this is what they do. They try to go through the demands and needs of the club. Or if you're an aspiring or growing agent, it's always good to use this, because you're going to break that chain of people not replying to you. Okay, so I hope this help you. I'm Gaucho Brian, FIFA licensed agent. I help teach agents also to network and build connection with clubs. So if you find this, if you're always facing challenges in building your connection with clubs, you can book a consultation call with me below, and I'm going to help you bridge that gap so that you can start placing your players. And also, I do share tips on how agents can grow. So you can you can join my Skool community. Also, the link is below, so that you can keep learning and developing as an agent in future to place your players. Okay, take care. That was it for this video, and see you in another video. Bye for now.